Hi, my name is Jonathan Hanahan. I'm an assistant professor of design at the Sam Fox School at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a research project I've been doing, investigating machine learning and looking into e-waste and the future of the American landscape. So my practice is really about this idea of creating what I just called thick interfaces, and thick interfaces are really uh, scenarios or experiences which attempt to demystify the magic of digital technologies and reveal the kind of moral and physically complex nature that these systems entail. And my process is largely dictated by this relationship of really trying to find the right marriage between a subject and a tool and just allow an output to happen. So I really view my role as a designer as much more curatorial than as an author, right? So an example is a project I did in 2016, which was using this tool called Tilt 3D, which allows you to visualize websites in 3D. And I started plugging fake news websites into that, just to kind of visualize the kind of messiness of their architecture of those sites. And they sort of created these really bombastic, kind of wild architectures. And then I went on to work with an architectural renderer to skin these fake cities with real materials, right? And really sort of like tease out what these spaces would be if they were real and play around with that oscillation back and forth. So this new project is really about investigating maybe the most physical aspect of a digital system, which is this idea of electronic waste. And electronic waste is essentially anything with a screen or electronic componentry built into it. And why this is such a problem is e-waste is the fastest growing waste stream on the planet. And while 70% of new technologies are recyclable, only 30% of them get recycled because the processes needed to make things smaller and faster and more advanced means that there's no industry standard for how we might dismantle these things after their lifespan. And so there's really sort of it's chaos as to how you might extract those products. So what happens is lots of this stuff just, it gets illegally dumped into third world countries, and it ends up in places like this. This is a site called Agbogbloshie in Ghana, which is the largest illegal e-waste site. And so it's a space where people spend their livelihoods trying to, through a lot of like very physically and environmentally hazardous ways, extract those materials and sell them, right? And so this project for me was really about, well, what happens when we get to the tipping point where just exporting this stuff to third world countries is no longer in play, and they start to actually creep into the everyday lives of the consumers of these products. And I looked at the idea of where would this live, and these are the spaces that I really sort of hypothesized, these edgeland conditions between the rural and the natural in industrialized societies. And if you look at, the more I looked at the relationship between these spaces, there's a lot of similar results, right? It's similar aesthetics, similar scenarios, the relationship between this sort of tension between the industrial and the rural or the natural. And so I decided to basically take these two distinct data sets that share characteristics and feed them into a machine learning algorithm that would then produce output based off of those data sets. And that ended up producing two really sort of distinct series of images. One that sort of revolved around really strong horizon lines. And again, I think what's really fascinating with these images is they feel very foreign, but also really familiar at the same time. And the other sort of really strong consideration that happened was this result of these mound situations, which, in the American landscape, particularly, or the Midwestern landscape, and particularly around St. Louis, but also kind of across the Midwest, the mound is a really prominent relic of former societies and civilizations, but also this sort of like the idea of these piles of discarded elements, right? And so These sort of images and these sort of speculative landscapes have been really compelling. The thing that I've been working on most recently is about now trying to re-inject some of that reality back into these images. So I've been working kind of meticulously at cataloging the elements inside of those original data sets and trying to get the algorithm to see those original objects in these new speculative spaces. So this is the kind of the current thing that I'm working on, is really meticulously trying to attack these things, but create results that both see, that create speculative images, but also see those original artifacts and objects in those spaces. So thanks for letting me share this work with you today. And you can view a lot more of this on my site and other spaces.